Okay, I'm talking with Bob Clark, and I must say it is quite an honor to interview you there, sir. I've been watching your films for years. Thank you for chatting with us here on Ultrasonic Film.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
Alrighty. I got to ask you about a personal favorite of mine, and it's called Black Christmas.
Yes.
Black Christmas, it's pretty much kick-started a lot of the 80s horror films. It was one of the first ones. It predates Friday the 13th and Halloween, and,
yes.
and you use a remarkable point of view, the killer's point of view shots, which were, of course, landmarked in those other films. This film came out before. Did it really hit big at the time, or has it sort of developed a cult following?
Black Christmas was a substantial success in Canada. Mm-hmm. Then it was picked up by Warner Brothers in the United States, and it was changed to, I think, Silent Night, Evil Night or something, and they went back to Black Christmas. It didn't succeed in the States, but it was, as I said, a pretty good hit in Canada. Okay. And often people have said it was the predecessor of the movies you mentioned, and it really was. It predated them by quite a few years. Mm-hmm. I think it was influential, I believe. Certainly many people who are above to believe that.
Okay, sir, I gotta ask you on, of course, Porky's, the film that is still one of the top grossing Canadian films of all time.
Right.
Essentially, it seems to have some America Graffiti elements to it. Was that something that when you were shooting the film, how did that film come about?
Porky's was a film that I had spent at least 15 years collecting mythologies from American high schools. I realized very early on that there'd never really been a remotely believable sexual coming-of-age film in the United States. It was always some kind of beach blanket bingo of things that were not remotely related to our lives. So I had collected stories of basically young men and their initiations into their sexual lives, which I thought was a perfectly legitimate subject for comedy. Porky's was a great deal of it happened in Fort Lauderdale High, where I grew up and went to high school, but the stories were collected from high schools around the country, and that's what made up the story. So no, Porky's was a serious film for me. It was much despised by some people, but much liked by others. So over the years, it's kind of gone from a pariah to somewhat of a classic. It's interesting.
Oh, and very much so, yes. One thing I want to point out about both Black Christmas and Porky's, and I hope you're in agreement with me on this, sir, is that your use of characters laughing on screen in the background adds to much of the humor that's going on screen. You have characters on screen laughing, and it really it draws the audience in very, very well. And is that a conscious decision by you?
I think it was, yes. What I observed, especially with both movies being about young people, young college people in Black Christmas and high schoolers, and that is the nature of their behavior. There is a great deal of inside humor, and it struck me as true. So, of course, it's risky, as I did in Porky's, to do a scene where someone laughs and falls off a chair, Christopher saying it's that funny, but I thought it was. That the story was told to me as if it had happened and made me laugh that way. So, it was a conscious decision to have it. It could seem extreme to some people, but not in my experience.
But it worked out really, really well. Okay, some of the favorite talent that you've worked with, because you've worked with a lot of notable talent. Who would be some of the people that really just stood out for you?
I hate to even do such a thing because I leave someone out, but I mean, let me think of James Mason, and to work with James and Sir John Gielgud way back with Murder by Decree.
That's also, I should recommend that as well. We've got Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper in Murder by Decree. So
I think that's maybe the most surprising $4 million movie ever made. It was a huge movie and very well regarded, but it was different. Then Jack Lemmon got an Academy Award nomination for Tribute. When I did American Clock, I worked with actors like Mary McDonnell and David Strathairn and Aaron McGavin. I've done 5 films with, and John Boyd, of course. What a great thrill! John is simply one of the masters. And like I say, I've all my boys from Porky's and my girls too. So I've simply put myself right in the position I said I would by leaving a lot of wonderful people out, Jeff.
Once we're talking about comedies, of course I have to mention A Christmas Story. The period flavor for this movie is absolutely phenomenal. Was that something that you and Gene Shepard really concentrated on when you were doing the film?
Oh, yeah. I grew up, my early childhood was in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a lot like the Indiana steel towns that Gene had grown up with. And the mood and the ambience of Christmas, the phenomenon of Christmas, the sociological experience it was critical to our view of it. We went to great lengths. The look was extraordinarily important to us. We shot it in Cleveland, for Chicago, and then Toronto as well, to be sort of a classic North American mid-sized town. So the answer is emphatically yes.
Yes.
The atmosphere was as important as the sixth character.
Now, your films, like the three I've previously mentioned, anyone who's done even one film that could be considered a classic, and like I mentioned, Porky's, A Christmas Story, and Black Christmas could be considered classics right across North America and influential on their times.
Often a lot of people have said I've been ahead of flattering for me to repeat it, but it has been said a lot that I've been ahead of my times with some of my films and some of my attitudes. It's hard to say. I've been very fortunate gotten in a position where I've been able to do some smaller independent films that are very challenging and very rewarding and very serious films. I worked on with Arthur Miller on American Clock for TNT and Amblin Films for the Writer Series, and it's Arthur Miller. I got to work with our greatest playwright, and I've done a number of small films.
So one thing I truly admire about your work is that almost all of your films are completely different from the other ones. But at the same time, you've worked in so many different genres, and a lot of directors just tend to stay to one or two genres.
Well, I appreciate that very much, because I very much intended to be an eclectic. I did not want to be... I am an auteur because I have control of my films, and I do them from beginning to the final mix. In that sense, commercial or not, I've never had any interference.
And I really want to thank you for taking time out to speak with me. I've been watching your films for years, and I'm a huge fan, and please keep it up.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.